I went home, said to my dad, I want to be a quantity surveyor. And he said, are you sure?
You were a commercial director.
Yes.
You are now managing director, as I've just explained.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about AI. How do you see the QS role in like 5 years' time? Do you see it being dramatically different or not? Hello and welcome to the Own the Build podcast with me, Paul Hemming. As you guys know, we're launching a new series in 2026 featuring one exclusive interview every month with a current or former commercial director. I did previously say the shows will appear in your feed once a month on the last Wednesday of each month, but it was all getting too complicated. So just remember this. The last show of each month on the usual Monday slot will be the exclusive director series. And on that note, I am delighted to welcome our third guest to the show, Mark Walker, Managing Director of Seddon Housing Partnerships, an 85 million turnover main contractor based in the North West, working on projects in the North West and the Midlands, as he told his Brummie friend, focused on social housing and part of a $250 million-ish main contractor group. The Seddon Group. Mark, I am rattling on as I often do. Welcome to the show, mate. And just, long-time listeners of the show know that I have a real interest in people's accents. So it's a bit of a telltale accent that you have, but just where are you from? How would you define your accent?
Maybe a bit Scouse, just outside.
A bit?
Come on. I'm just out. I'm outside Liverpool, about 10 miles or so outside Liverpool, where I'm from. So we'll say a bit.
Is that not Scousing? Because I have
on the border. Let's say
friends in London who I would call Cockneys, who get incredibly frustrated about them not being Cockneys because they're not from East London. They're from North London or whatever. To me, it's all the same. But is it? So you're not Scouse?
I wouldn't say properly. I think
you're a fraud.
There'll be some who pull me up if I said there was a
Scouser.
Full Scouser. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so we could talk about accents all day, but since booking you in as a guest for the show, your career is going to change, or your role has changed.
Yes, that's correct.
You were a commercial director.
Yes.
You are now managing director, as I've just explained.
Yes. Just
paint a path for the listeners, if you can, over a few minutes of kind of your journey from starting in the industry to today.
Yeah, okay. So I started in the industry when I was 16, straight out of school, and looking at my qualifications on a day release basis. Originally, up until about 12 months before I started work, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to study architecture.
Are you okay?
And that's where I was, in my mind, kind of growing up. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not as a kid, but maybe sort of 10, 11 sort of years old. And that's where I wanted, that's ultimately what I wanted to do. And then part of being in school, work experience in school, you go off and do your 2 weeks work experience. And because I put construction as something that I wanted to do, we ended up at the local college for a fortnight and learning the roles in construction, if you like. So it wasn't work experience per se, but it was kind of a 2 week sort of, a 2 week course of what different roles in construction do.
As opposed to actually active work experience?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
And you'd go out, we went out on site visits, you'd have various roles within the construction industry, people coming in and talking to you about what they did.
Nice.
So, kind of from that, I went home, said to my dad, I want to be a quantity surveyor. And he said, are you sure?
Because what's that?
Well, my dad's he's not necessarily, he's in the petrochemical industry, so he understood the kind of roles. So from there on, from that day on sort of thing, I wanted to be a surveyor. So, it was probably fortunate in the fact that I had something pretty clear in my mind that I wanted to do from before I left school. I then started applying for probably professional apprenticeships, as we say now at Seddon, and looking at the different options open to me, and started that. Pretty much left school at the end of GCSEs, sort of June time. couple of weeks holiday, and then dove straight into it.
As
at
what?
16.
And did a HNC or something
So
like
as a
that?
trainee QS, started off doing a BTEC in construction in the built environment for 2 years, then onto a HNC for 2 years, which then on the 5-year QS day release degree
It
put you in
flipped into it.
Yeah, it put you into the degree then at year 3.
Yeah, because I did the same thing. I did 2 years. I went from 18, straight from school, trainee QS, HNC, 19, 20, and then
Same, yeah. Same,
3
just-
years flipped into.
Yeah.
So you got the construction grounding and then kind of specialised.
Yeah, very much the same. But with starting at 16, I had that 2 years of a BTEC, which is slightly different from your path.
Trainee QS, was there always the lofty ambition of commercial director? Was there someone you looked up to, and I mean, beyond the obvious of like the money and everything?
Was there somebody I looked up to? Probably not a person. It's always like, oh, they look important, don't they? So,
That's what people think of you now.
oh dear. But, you kind of look up to those people, don't you? There wasn't a specific person, if you like, but you look up to those people and you think, I wonder how you get there. That'd be nice to be there maybe one day, but I wouldn't say I had a kind of hell-bent ambition or direction. That's where I want to be. I mean, one element in all the way through my career, if you like, is I always wanted to offer value, which sounds like a very QS-y term and a very QS-y thing to say, but I always wanted to make sure that I was delivering the best I could in the role I was in. It was never, right, I've done that for 6, 12, 18 months now, next, what's next? I always wanted to kind of make sure that I delivered the best value and did the best job that I possibly could in each role.
And so just talk to me about the roles that you've held.
Okay. So started as trainee QS for probably a couple of years, moved up to assistant QS, through QS, senior QS, and then in the business I was in before I joined Seddon in May 2019, I progressed from senior QS to managing QS.
And so all the way from trainee to managing QS at one company?
No.
Okay.
Four different businesses, but kind of I went into the business before Seddon and progressed into that managing QS role. Left there in May of 2019, joined Seddon as commercial manager in May of 2019, and then progressed through in roles of commercial manager, regional commercial manager, commercial director, and now MD. And now MD.
That's pretty good progress in what?
Just under 7 years.
6, 7 years. So from managing QS to managing director, pretty good going. You must have been delivering a lot of value, mate.
But I think that tells an awful lot about Seddon, says an awful lot about Seddon rather, in the fact that the Seddon's preference is develop the people we've got, promote from within. It is a big thing with our business on the basis that those people are ready. And we've got a number of different sort of success stories within our business people at Seddon who've come in as trainee bricklayers, trainee joiners who have gone into management roles and kind of right the way through.
That's the beauty of construction in some ways, right? It's kind of the world is your oyster. I always think with construction, like the world is your oyster. You could be a brickie that ends up being the MD, right?
Yes,
it's just very open, and it's nice to hear you say that. You said you wanted to be in construction?
Yes.
Now, talk about this a lot on the show when I interview people. The majority of people say to me that their route into construction was kind of one of two things. One, total randomness, which would be my story, which is I just wanted a job that would pay for uni, trainee QS, all right, and here I am. And the other being kind of a family tie, where, a parent was in construction and therefore you understood what a QS or because there isn't many kids running around the playgrounds thinking I want to be a QS, is there? But because most people don't know it. But that's why I'm interested, A, in the fact that you knew that you wanted to be in it, and B, that work experience in inverted commas that you had sounds quite unique in that it wasn't like you were just forced as a trainee. You didn't just go and get put as a trainee QS. You got shown the industry, it sounds like, and thought, oh, I want to be a QS.
So. Yeah, very much. You know, it was almost like every day you were exploring a different role.
It's really good though, isn't it, that?
It was brilliant. You know, it was kind of, I almost remember thinking back when you get allocated your work experience and some of my friends were going to something a little bit more exciting than the local college for a fortnight to almost learn about the different roles in construction. But you kind of, I look back now and that's a massively pivotal 2 weeks in like what's turned into my career. Because, you know, if I hadn't gone and done that 2 week sort of placement and understood the roles, would I have understood what a QS did, for argument's sake? So, you know, that was hugely pivotal. And, you know, and it's pretty sad, really, that I always wanted to be a QS, you know.
But why? But like, so why did you always want to be in construction? What drew you?
I couldn't tell you. If you want the truth. There's nothing that really stands out. It's like I wanted to be in construction, or I had, you know, albeit a slightly different route. So I wanted to be an architect, which, can't believe I'm saying really now.
As a QS.
As a QS. But there was nothing that, I can't remember a defining moment. I wanted to get into construction because of X, Y, or Z. So my dad is in the industry in a loose way, if you like, in the petrochemical industry and more the manufacturing industry, but not construction as such.
But it sounds like, because again, talked about it a lot on the show and touched on it there before, like the world is your oyster in construction. You can kind of, I know you can do this in any industry, right? But you can kind of go in so many different routes as a QS, right? You could come in and be, right, I'm a trainee QS, I want to be a commercial director. Commercial director, then there's managing director, which is where you've landed. Mm-hmm. You could end up setting up your own subby, right? You could end up as a freelance QS, which is a pretty good life if that's what you want to do. Yeah. You can end up setting up a QS consultancy. Yeah. Like all of those offer in varying different amounts, like work-life flexibility. They offer good money. Mm-hmm. Like you say, in some ways that moment was kind of seminal for you. Like, oh, I want to be a QS and look at how well you've done. Is there something to be kind of learned from that? Because we talk so much about there's not enough QSs in the industry, and it feels like by a happy accident you became one in the same way I did. But it also sounds like that 2 weeks perfectly elucidated to you construction and helped you land on QS, not architect.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And you know, whether they still do that program, I'm not sure.
But it was great.
But for me personally, it was great. And yeah, something I've never asked the question of do they still do it? And maybe I should, because maybe did they appreciate the value in it? Possibly not.
Yeah, because it sounds like it was
possibly
great.
Not. Yeah. They may not appreciate the value of that had. So maybe that's a takeaway from today of go and ask the question of that college of do they still do it?
Yeah.
And if not, why? And maybe outline the benefits that I saw in it. Does that 100%. Make a difference? I'm not too sure, but it'd be good for them for feedback if nothing else.
Yeah. And so if we look at your career, right, up until this point, sounds like as you were going from trainee to managing QS, you took in a few different companies, and yes. Did you stay there for a handful of years each, roughly? Or
so a couple were fairly short stints. There were two that were fairly short stints around 2008 with the credit crunch. Okay. So I joined.
That's when I came into construction. that was my welcome package.
So I left. I left a company I was at. I went to another, and then that was in the April of 2008, and credit crunch hit, and I was only there for a period of 8 months because redundancies. They were starting to really pull the strings in and look at staff and jobs that weren't going to site because people weren't spending money. So I spent 8 months there, and then I went to a company after that, which wasn't my bag at all. Okay. Being completely honest,
like culturally, it just didn't fit.
It was PQSing. It wasn't contracting, okay. And it wasn't kind of a sector that I was necessarily excited by. Let's say, but at the time, unfortunately, it was go and do that and have a job or not, as the case may be. But those two businesses were relatively short stints. Okay. But outside of that, I've been with Seddon best part of 7 years. I was with my previous employer, prior to Seddon for 7 years. Mm-hmm. The employer prior to poaching, where I was previous to Seddon, 4 years. So, it's not, I've got a stint in the middle that's...
Yes, but you kind of build, clearly you kind of build trust, credibility at those companies. Is there, just thinking about how you got to where you are today, is there a moment or a period where you look back, or a project as a unlock, where you think that's where I got the confidence, or that's where I got the credibility to get the step to whether it's managing QS or commercial director or whatever it is? Is there a key moment in your career you look back on?
I think there's probably a couple in the employment prior to Seddon, in the fact that we had a couple of jobs that landed that we weren't quite expecting. So from a resource perspective, we were stretched, and I put my hand up to my commercial director at the time and said, do you need someone to go and manage those projects from a commercial point of view?
Extra projects than you were already managing?
Yeah, so I was, I had my own projects, if you like, day to day. So do you want me to go and take on board the management of those two as well? And I think he was almost a little taken aback of...
What?
Yeah, and it was... Yeah. And that was kind of, my path into the managing QS role, if you like. I took a couple of projects on, managed them through, did all right.
Would you, and so you were just a senior QS at the time?
Correct, yeah.
Senior QS, managing one project?
Yes.
And then there was two other projects?
Two projects.
Sorry. 2 projects, and another 2 came up?
Yeah.
And so then did you have a project surveyor on each one, or? On
the 2 that I inherited, if you like, or that I put myself forward for, there was a surveyor on each of those. On the 2 that I had, I retained.
And so that was almost putting your hand up for management, effectively saying, I can do that. And that was, by the sounds of it, something which was intentional. You thought, that's how I get the jump.
At the time, it was probably more helping out.
Really?
I'll,
the value.
We're struggling. The value, back to the value. I'll go and help out, and almost a try before you buy, I suppose, in many
ways.
Both ways. For our commercial director at the time. And that was kind of it. From a management point of view, that was the step in. Mm-hmm. Enjoyed it. And then I moved from those 2 projects. I moved on to a block of 3 projects for a singular client. I'm managing those, and they were much larger in scale. I'm managing those, and there was an awful lot of lessons that I learned through those 3 projects where things weren't necessarily going to plan or going well. The projects were struggling, but it gave me different lessons to learn from those experiences, which I think really did stand me in good stead. And they were very challenging, extremely challenging. So it wasn't just all, a bed of roses. It was. It started to become a challenge, and the more challenging it became, the more resilient I became, and the more I wanted to really make a difference.
Because it's funny, isn't it? If I look back on my career, and I kind of took a couple of jumps from senior QS to commercial manager. Mm-hmm. It was a big subby, but I was kind of managing, say, 10 people. I reflect on it as though I got probably a couple of good jobs. I know that that might sound, I'm trying to think of the word, but what I'm trying to say is I could have been given a bad job, but randomly I got given a good job. And then you kind of build something off the back of that. And then you end up with some bad jobs, and it is what it is, right? But already kind of got some credit in the bank from a good job. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, I say that, and I think some of the best lessons were from the horror jobs, to be honest with you. What's your view on that?
Totally agree. The kind of the where you learn your lessons, or the hard lessons, are on the problem jobs. And I always felt like I got given the problem job.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's a sign of someone who is good, right? Is, oh my God, this one's got, right, where's Mark? Get over here, Mark.
Good odds, after enough. I'm not too sure which. But, I went through a spell of having the problem jobs, and that really sort of defined me, and a lot of the lessons that I learned from those. When the job's going well, there's decent profit margins in it. It's a lot easier, and I always have sympathy, if you like, for QSs who are on challenging jobs, because they can be working 2, 3, 4 times as hard as somebody
and not seeing it
and still experiencing loss after loss than someone who's on a really good job, retaining great profit margins, but not got the same sort of battles.
So how do you now, like, imagine people listen to this, there's QSs on the good jobs, there's QSs on the tough jobs, or even like in your team, what would you say to the person on that really difficult job to kind of like, as the take, like because you hear, if you're sad enough to go on QS forums as I have been, like a lot of people kind of saying, or the younger QSs saying, this job is horrible. It's a grind. I'm constantly arguing. There's no margins. I'm miserable, right? And I know the exact jobs that they're talking about, but as do you. But at the same time, there's something in it.
Definitely. The lessons that those commercial staff will learn on those jobs in terms of the resilience, the resilience that they'll develop, but also having those battles, having those arguments, having the difficult conversations. You're learning an awful lot of skills in that.
You're learning how to have them, but also how to potentially avoid them in the future, right?
Exactly that. And, some of if you end up in contractual battles, possibly legal battles, you learn every single sort of conversation you're having, every difficult conversation you're having, every battle you may have, you're taking something away from every single one of those conversations, and you're arming yourself very much for the future in terms of, possibly making sure that you don't make the same mistake again. You
don't want to be doing that, do you?
Or go back there again, but certainly the exposure that you get into some of the processes. If some of the processes end up in adjudication, for argument's sake, or other sort of litigation routes, on a good job, you tend not to be in that place, both with supply chain and the client. It's very much, it's both up the line to the client and to the supply chain. If you're on a good job, you may be not having those experiences.
And getting that full exposure, and talked about like the different career paths. One of the career paths, another one for a QS is to go as an adjudicator or something like quantum. There's so many things, and it just gives you that exposure. So just going back to the question of like seminal moment or seminal projects for your career, when you actually look back in retrospect, are the bad projects in some ways the seminal moments?
Yes.
Really?
100%.
But that's, so then you talk to the fictional QS who's, this isn't what I want to be doing. I'm not enjoying it. I hate it. Too much arguments, too much stress. Actually, that was you X number of years ago. And actually, when you look back, you kind of broad shoulders think, God, it's good that I did that. Because having done that, I can talk to my team who are on the bad jobs. I can talk to my team who are on the good jobs. And, you actually get it.
It's kind of twofold. It gives you that experience that you've been there.
Yeah.
When you're talking to your team, you've been there. You've been on the bad job. So it's not like you could be in the situation where you sat there and if you've had all good jobs all your career and
I don't think anyone has done that.
No, but it's not like you can sit there and say, I've been there when you really haven't.
Yeah.
So, it gives you that sort of wider experience and wider know-how to a degree for problem solving, but it equips you much better for leadership and management later on down the line, because those difficult conversations are maybe not as difficult because you've learnt skills, you've picked up skills along the way, and you've never had a difficult conversation before, and then you step into management and then your first difficult conversation comes around. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, because there's going to be multiple. You're probably having difficult conversations every week, right? It's just constantly happening, and in a senior position. Just going back to that moment where you're senior QS, you put your hand up and say, "Give me all the jobs."
Not quite all.
So you go from 2 jobs to 4 jobs. All of a sudden, I'm guessing as senior QS, you did have some project surveyors already on your 2 jobs, but you took on another. Oh, you didn't?
No.
Okay.
So the jobs that I had, I was kind of the sole, the sole QS on those.
And so you took on 2 new jobs with project surveyors.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, you've gone from senior QS, going along at your own pace, doing all your own stuff. You know what you're doing, and you're doing it to the standard that you see and deem acceptable, to all of a sudden having this mindset shift, let's call it, where you're managing 2 not counterparts, but like people that you're not that much more senior than. Like how did you? What did that look like? That shift from QS to I'm actually kind of managing that. How did you do it?
I think the difficulty that I had to get around in my own head initially, where, if I remember rightly, both were actually older than me in age.
Hard, yeah.
So that was the first sort of obstacle, because I kind of put my hand up, I'll do it, and then how? It was almost like that how, and then kind of you're dealing with people who, in their eyes, and probably did at the time, are more experienced, and older, and it's kind of like, okay.
Really hard that is, isn't it? I had to do the same thing. Really hard. But
the first, it's funny because I remember certainly a conversation with one of those QSs when I took over the job. So we sat down, cup of tea, and he was actually quite thankful that there was someone there to support. So, again, you're going back to what could be a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
You build up the whole scenario in your mind. You play it out 74 times on the drive to go and meet, and then all of a sudden you sat in front of someone who was like, I'm glad you're here.
Oh, because you're kind of driving to site anxious, like, why have I said I'd do this, and why have I've got to go and manage this person? And actually, it's all in your head.
Exactly that. Yeah. Exactly that. And I think that's
life, isn't it?
As human beings, we build up things in our minds that don't actually play out in the manner that you think it might, and I think that's good in some ways because you're almost preparing for the worst. Yeah. So anything better than the worst is a bonus and a win. Yeah. But I remember kind of sitting down, particularly one in the first instance, and I'm glad you're here. And
which then confidence boost.
Yeah, which then followed into, and here's all my problems. But no, it was, we kind of, it was certainly one of the 2 individuals. It was a really good experience.
How did you manage that person who was older than you? Describe your approach.
It was almost a recognition early on, and a couple of joking comments to almost break that barrier down that, yes, you are 10 years older than me, but I'm here to help you. Yeah. So let's put that to one side. That's because it's...
Focus on the value, let's just get on with it.
I'm here to help you. And it was sitting down, plotting out the issues that individual had and working through them. And, in some ways, showing them how things can be sped up from an IT perspective. The little things like that, but concentrating and looking at the sort of quick, easy wins to get that person on side and to give them the support and what they required at that time. And just someone to talk to. I think a lot of the time,
empathy.
A lot of people, or the struggles people may have, is because they think they're fighting that battle on their own.
It's a bit like you on the drive to the meeting, running it 74 times in your head, and actually the reality is not that, but actually just being able to share the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Excellent. And so, how has your view of the commercial function changed since you became director?
Okay, it became kind of more of a rounded function, if that makes sense. So, as commercial manager, it was very much overseeing the commercial managers. As a commercial manager, overseeing the projects and senior QSs, trainees, if you like, and not being in charge of the estimating function, for argument's sake, or the supply chain management. So when you're flipping over from that commercial manager role into the commercial director role, you're then overseeing the whole function, which I think from an accountability piece is good. It sits well there, because how many times have we heard QS is saying, or the estimators priced that wrong. As commercial and as QSs, we're brilliant at telling the estimators where they've gone wrong.
We don't often tell them when they did it well.
No, we never tell them when they do it right, do we? Or there's profit.
That was your genius, wasn't it? Yeah. I'd save that 10%.
yeah, of course it was, yeah. And then the estimator lost you the 5.
Yeah.
But, it was very much having the full oversight of that commercial function, which I found a benefit, to be honest.
Yeah.
And quite exciting that we keep that accountability and ownership right the way down the chain. So getting the commercial teams involved with the estimating teams early doors through the tenders. So it was you've got that ownership from day one.
So commercial function at Seddon Housing Partnerships for you encompasses estimating, surveying, and supply chain.
Yes.
And so the step from commercial manager, kind of a bit tunnel visioned on projects, right? I've just got to deliver this project at X%. How did you prep for the change? Because it's kind of a similar thing again, right? Where I'm guessing as commercial manager, all of a sudden you're managing estimators who in kind of a not dissimilar way to you managing that older QS. Again, you're like, I've got to win these people over. I've got to kind of show them some, like, how did you do it?
It was the advantage I probably had, or I did have.
Charm. Endless Scouse charm.
Certainly not charm. Is when I made the step change from commercial manager to commercial director, that also was a change in business unit.
Okay.
So I've been a regional commercial manager for a different part of our business, more the sort of commercial construction arm of the business. And then when I progressed up to commercial director, it was to move into a new business unit as well, to move into our affordable social housing arm of the business. So it was almost
like a reset or a fresh start.
It was, and I think that certainly helped in an awful lot of ways, that you haven't got a team who are maybe looking at you if you were performing a different role previously. So you've stepped into a new role. So it was stepping into a new team. So that really helped, because I haven't been in that team in any other capacity at the time.
Makes sense.
So that really, really helped. And also, whilst the estimating function in this scenario it wasn't my responsibility previously, I'd sat in on the adjudication meetings. I'd sat through the process, I'd worked through the process with the estimators. So it wasn't you. It wasn't you, which was also obviously an advantage. So it was more than being that person that signs off on bids, adjudications, and just understanding that process.
Are you in the role of commercial director at the time? It was you that was final signatory, if you like, on the tender adjudication. A combination of
It was a team. It was a team effort, and it all depended on the size, type, and value of the project within our business. We have a governance structure that that states up to a certain value, it's a certain individual, and then over that it goes to it's more a group decision. But ultimately that fell myself.
And so, as you know, kind of as a business, our business is kind of connecting, estimating, and QSing with software, right? So don't get me started on the topic. You see, you didn't even try, and I've drifted you there.
I haven't even mentioned it.
Exactly, yeah. So you talked about commercial people, QSs, commercial managers, being part of the tender process estimate, so that there is some level of ownership. Because, and we've talked about it on the show before as well, about, and that line I take from Mike Ashcroft, who is the founder of Estimate One, former estimator, who said to me, "You always tell me about the 5% failing, but you never tell me about the 10% win," which is so true, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, it is.
Just describe your strategy then, as director of estimating, surveying, and supply chain. Mm-hmm. What is your strategy around estimating and the involvement of surveyors during that stage? Okay,
so an awful lot, or the majority of our new build work is two-stage work, or negotiated bids.
Nice.
So working through PCSAs, designing schemes to the requirements of our clients, also to the budgets of our clients. But we have estimators involved through that PCSA phase. So, agreeing a tender list for argument's sake, working through the quotes when they land, sitting side by side with the estimator, making sure that inclusions, exclusions are priced or not, as the case may be. And we've got the surveying knowledge through experience they've had, with certain types of projects or certain house types. We've got our own house types at Seddon Housing Partnerships, so they kind of know the issues that we may have had with pricing those house types previously, for argument's sake. So it's making sure that the full team are on board with the approach we're taking. The subcontractors and supply chain members that we're using, and in having an input. I think that's the main thing from a QS point of view.
Some ownership.
The surveyors having an input and feeling very much involved in that process, which the ownership then naturally flows from, as opposed to being handed a box of lever arch files on a Friday and saying it's starting Monday. But there are other advantages that come from that for me in terms of the commercial team and the operations team, because the ops are involved as well as commercial. They know the project pre it hitting site. It's not a box of files and then starting to try and understand the project.
God, I need to procure groundworks in 3 weeks.
They've lived and breathed the project from when it's come through the door in our office. But they've also collaborated with the supply chain. So those relationships, those discussions are already there. So when it comes to start to procuring, it's not start again. A lot of the work's been done. The relationships are there.
You understand it.
Understand where the discussions are, because it's lots and lots of discussions will go on during the tender process.
And so how many QSs roughly in the team?
In the team across the 2 regions, we have 20-25 of varying levels.
And let's imagine a project QS. Are they allocated kind of 80% of their time on a live project and 20% on a tender, so that they're always on a tender? Like how do you actually divvy up that team?
I
know it's probably not that simple, right?
No, I mean, a lot of our clients like, certain site teams, for argument's sake, and we try and keep site teams together and site teams with clients where it's working, because why would you keep reinventing the wheel every time a project comes through the door? So we do look to give continuity to teams, but continuity to clients also. But that doesn't always happen. It doesn't always work. But it's very rare that we'll have a QS 100% allocated to a pre-con project, for argument's sake. They'll have a live project and they'll be, using your 80-20 analogy, utilising a lesser percentage of their time to the pre-con job, which will be, flow through into being their next job. Where we would have full-time commercial resource, not resource, if it's much more of a complex project and we're looking at it from a risk profile for ourselves, because that's something obviously that we need to look at and back off. So if it's outside of our normal risk profile, for argument's sake, we'll take a different view on that.
And put a QS on it.
And possibly, or certainly a greater percentage of time. There'll always be a QS on it, but a greater percentage of the time, and also have that operational input also.
And so the strategy, just zooming out, is every tender, just like every project, is a collaboration between estimating, QS, estimating, commercial, ops, and supply chain.
And design.
And design
function, design managers.
I know that sounds kind of obvious, right? But so many businesses have the silo, don't they? Where it's kind of estimating to a point, then as you kind of wind yourself close to, we're feeling good about this job, you start to bring in the rest of the departments. I guess where the difference is 2-stage and single stage. So it makes it easier, and I guess it's easier for you to allocate resource on the 2-stage, right?
Very much so.
What's the split between 2-stage and single stage for you, roughly?
From a new build perspective, 100% 2-stage or negotiated. Yeah.
That's great, isn't it? And it just makes such a difference, doesn't it, to even just the resourcing and then the intelligence and experience that you allocate to a project and what that gives the project long term for the that initial period.
And also getting best value for a client.
Exactly.
If you've got that time to work through and look at varying different solutions to to what the employer's requirements are, you'll offer better value to that project and ultimately better value to the client, as opposed to single stage, 8, 6, 4 weeks to price a scheme through, not properly be able to assess risk.
Exclude a load, qualify a load, because you have to, because how quickly can you do it?
Or catch a cold. Yeah. Which, unfortunately, many in our industry have done. So, that's why we look at that from that perspective. We want to look at our risk profile, obviously, but we also want to be here with being Seddon have been in existence 128, 129 years. We want to be here for 128, 129 years more. So to be able to support our clients, to be able to keep paying our supply chain members, and not take risks which ultimately could prove detrimental.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in terms of strategy, it seems like you're bringing the teams together quite a lot. Just talk to me about, it's a hard thing to kind of summarize perhaps, but your like leadership style when you were managing QS would be very different to, or that period where you were becoming managing QS, which we've already talked about, would probably be very different to your leadership style today. I'm sure it rhymes, but it would have evolved over time. Just how do you describe like how you lead your team now?
With a few more grey hairs, because they certainly weren't there when I put my hand up at late 20s to take on those couple of projects. I think I've always been a very calm leader, calm and considered leader. In terms of how's my approach changed, I've got an awful lot more experience now, both kind of in leadership, in management, also on different issues that we've come across in commercial issues that we've come across along the way. But I think, has it changed? Of course it's changed. Of course it's changed because I've got more experience along the way in both management. Has my style changed? Yes. I'm struggling
trying to define it. Yeah,
I'm trying to
it's quite
define
difficult.
it. Kind of
calmness is an interesting word to choose to as a defining word. I've always been quite calm. So, have you been in environments where the leadership wasn't calm, or is that just who you are?
No, I've been in certain organisations where the leadership is chaotic.
Yeah,
I've been in organisations where old school, maybe, table banking doesn't. It's if you look in construction, 20, 30 years ago to today, I think that the leadership style's massively changed, hasn't it? But I've been in organisations where it wasn't pleasant as well.
Yeah, you don't want to make it's just nonsense, pleasant, isn't it, to be in that environment?
Yeah, and I've worked with managers and leaders who, the way they conduct themselves, maybe you'd look at them and think, "Oh, and you want me to come to you with bad news?"
Yeah.
Because one thing that I try, I operate with our team is, if there's issues, tell me.
Yeah, I'm here to help you.
Tell me.
Yeah.
I want to know what the issues are. We can all help each other.
That's the name of the game, right? In many ways.
Yeah. If you're gonna fly off the handle every time you hear a bit of bad news,
I don't want to go and speak to Mark.
That person's not going to come and give you that bad news. So that then just manifests into a problem later on down the line when it could possibly be too late. If we get issues on the table, no shocks, no surprises, issues on the table, let's look at them. Let's look at different solutions. There may not be any, but let's at least get it on the table. Let's look at it. Let's see what we can do together with the experience of 5 or 10 other people as well, because we've all had different experiences, and we've all arrived at the better results in different ways. So let's get a number of heads together. Let's get it on the table early enough.
If you were to talk to a commercial director today, say someone who's just starting out as a commercial director or in a leadership position generally, what advice would you give them around building an A-star commercial team? What's an A-star commercial team to you?
A team that reviews, manages risk. A team that's efficient. a team that looks at different scenarios, maybe thinks outside of the box and looks at different scenarios. But I think overall, a team that's fair.
Okay.
You've been a subby yourself, and
there's a lovely wry smile for me there, Mark.
Yeah, you've been a subcontractor yourself, and there can be nothing worse than a main contractor bullying, for want of a better description. I wouldn't want to see that in any of our team.
Really?
Yeah. I want our commercial team to be fair.
Yeah.
If you've done the work, be paid for the work.
Yeah.
And that's a key. That's massively key for me, that our team are fair.
And how do you instill that? Because
by example.
Okay.
By example. And from a fairness point of view, if you're seeing something that doesn't sit right, it's calling it out. It's having a conversation and explaining to that individual why. Because it may be lack of experience.
Yeah.
It may be rose-tinted, it may be rose-tinted glasses, maybe the wrong expression, but looking at, as a QS on a job, you can get emotionally attached and emotionally involved in that job. And if if a particular element of that is really winding you up.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? You're in the quagmire of it, and you just think, no, they're wrong and I am right.
Yeah. And you're not going to take that step back. You're not going to look at the bigger picture. Yeah. But it's, if you're identifying that, and that's down from my commercial managers downwards as well, it's sitting that individual down and explaining that, what initially why we want, the reasons to why we want to be fair. Yeah. And that's an ethos that we want through our team, but it's just explaining to that individual of looking at it in a different way and taking a step back, which is, we've all been there.
Yeah, no,
we've all been there.
It's, I guess, one of the things I've thought about quite a bit in kind of my journey to where I got to, and what I always liked about being a QS was I thought it's really easy at the end of the year to get your pay rise. Or not, right? I make that sound like I found it so easy to get a pay rise. I didn't. I was always terrible at it. But my point being, so I started as a trainee QS at 18 with one of my good mates from school, right? Who started as a trainee site manager. Now, he's ended up having a great career. But I always found like it was a lot easier as a QS at the end of the year to justify yourself. Because you could say, on that variation, I made the business £72,000. Or that job, the margin was 10%, it's now 17%. Like, you can just quantify with simplicity as a QS in a way that operationally it's maybe a little bit more difficult, because how many jobs finish on time? But there's so many reasons why a job doesn't finish on time, right? And yes, you could say that job made 10 to 17% in that example, but I just found it was very easy as a QS to do that. What that tells me, I guess, about, some of the cultures we have as QSs and fairness is that maybe sometimes we're encouraged as QSs to take a harder line than we otherwise would have done, because we want to be, so our appraisal in 2 months' time, I've got to get this job from 10% to 12%. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's then, so as a commercial director, you're stepped back and you're saying, well, no, this supply chain, and how do you, is there a way where margin isn't the only KPI or the number? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean, but if you're going solely take every single penny off every subcontractor, for argument's sake, your subcontractor walks away disgruntled from the job. They won't do another job with you potentially, or they'll certainly think twice about it. And then you're fishing in a smaller pool of supply chain members. We could develop a reputation for that as a business, which certainly
you don't want.
We don't want, because it's not what we're about.
It's a small industry, isn't it? Especially when you're regionalised.
It is. And then what ultimately ends up happening is you're dealing with supply chain members you never dealt with before. They may look at it and think, I'm only ever going to do one job with this business, so I maybe won't be as fair as I ordinarily would be.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
then it's the knock-on effects of that. Are we getting the same quality? We wouldn't be getting continuity. We're not getting efficiencies.
Yeah.
So, with our supply chain, we like to, we like to be fair and look after our supply chain because we want to do the next job with them and the next one after that, the next one after that.
And I guess my question is, when you're managing 20, 25 people, it's really easy to lean into the quantitative because it's kind of there for you. It's easy to see as a KPI. Oh, 10%, 12%, ta-da. What you've just talked about is more qualitative, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, oh, but that subby said this about that person, or that, why isn't that subby price for us? And I guess those are the things that maybe kind of dissipate into like the periphery when you're actually talking, when you're rationalizing what an amazing QS and that A-star QS or that A-star commercial team is. So how do you manage that, I guess?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult, but we were talking earlier on about estimators. And the estimators only find out when we've lost money on a package, how it's been priced.
Yeah.
You only found out from the commercial team if someone's disgruntled. If a subby or supply chain member's disgruntled, you never get a subby or supply chain member on the phone saying, aren't they brilliant?
I love that QS. What a charmer Paul is.
But it's, you pick up on, and certainly the team beneath myself, that they're a lot closer to the projects than me. You pick up on issues. You pick up on issues. If you start seeing great variances in accounts, for argument's sake, you can pick up on the issues, and then it's about drilling down and understanding those issues, because regardless of which sort of element of the project team or the wider team with the client or with our internal teams, we're all based on relationship.
Yeah.
Relationships are massive. They really, really are. Whether it be relationship with our internal teams, relationship with clients, relationship with supply chain members, relationship with consultants, they're massive.
Preaching to the converted here, like for me, it's kind of the QS sits as like a conduit between, and you just got, I mean, your how you define the commercial role there was estimating, ops, surveying, design. Was there one other? Supply chain, right? Those 5 things, all within your remit as a commercial director.
Ops didn't sit with me,
but
they were involved in that process. Yeah,
but it's like a key component.
Of course,
right?
it is. Yeah,
you need to have a relationship.
Yeah.
You need to have a relationship across that, the breadth of that. And I kind of think like a QS must have, and this is where at times the bad jobs kind of help you build like some deep relationships which power you at a later stage, right? In that you might have a subby who you're both working through this pig of a job and being fair to each other and helping each other through it. You might have a project manager who you've been working with on a job who later becomes an ops director, so that then when you're the commercial director, like do you see what I mean? Like all of these relationships really, really count. And I guess just my experience would tell me that you kind of, relationships are earned. You can't just,
it's trust. It's trust, isn't it? And trust is difficult to build and really, really easy to break.
Yeah.
But as you say, they are very much their earned. And when you are in those difficult projects and you sat there at R5 still on site moaning to each other, as you're building those relationships, or
that later power your career, right? Yeah. And it's wanting directorship or having the ambition of directorship and like pace to get there, I commend and recognize is a good thing. But sometimes you have to get there, you've got to kind of work your way through the quagmire, right, of not misery, but it is a bit of a grind. But I bet someone like you in your position now probably has 10, 15, 20 subbies, directors at subbies that you could probably pick up the phone to and say, how's it going? Need a favour. Or do you see what I mean? Is that where you've built that trust?
It's been built, and as you say, we could have been a QS together on jobs and kind of both worked the way through those positions.
Yeah.
But and that's really important. It's really important to be able to have that ability to speak at that level if there's an issue, or as you say, you need a favour, a job's not going to plan, and you need additional resource or what it may be, and be. It sounds like a bit of a corny phrase, but be the number one choice for that subcontractor.
Yeah, no, but it actually isn't, because on the flip side, having been the subcontractor, you do think, I'll do Mark a favour because I've called him up and done the reverse, right? And then it just becomes a thing, as opposed to where you just kind of think, I don't know, I couldn't speak to that person about this. So you just have to earn it over time, I guess is the point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so just talk to me about areas that you have been focused on improving as when you were a commercial director. Were there things that you were looking at in the department where you thought this just could be better, whether it be via supply chain relationships, training, software? Were there areas where you thought this is what I want to improve?
Yeah, I'm probably my own worst victim personally. I always want to improve things in my, for me personally. So I'm certainly the same with our team, and they'll probably tell you, if you spoke to any of them, my standards are pretty high in terms of a threshold of what what good looks like for me, and keeping those standards high. So there were certainly areas that I wanted to improve on, and when we implemented those plans.
What did they look like?
So it was looking at reporting.
Yeah.
Making sure that when we are reporting, the accuracy of the reporting was
age-old problem, isn't it?
Yeah, but the accuracy of reporting was improved. We knew where the risk and opportunities were and improving that. But also looking at, I wanted to see, one of the big things for me, I wanted to see the level of contingencies on projects, and they weren't being hidden, because every project has an issue. And it's the comfort or where I took comfort was knowing that if there was an issue, or still do take comfort knowing if there is an issue,
there is something somewhere.
There's something there for a rainy day, if you like, and knowing what that is.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than you're having an issue and you're thinking, oh, that's going to hit the bottom line by X. And then 3 months later, the QS pulls a rabbit out of the bag and says, oh, I had this all along. Why didn't you tell me that at the time? Because,
I've been stewing on it for 90 days.
I haven't slept for 3 months. But, it's certainly, it was transparency.
Yeah.
And transparency in reporting. But, that was a two-way street with the team of them being transparent with me in terms of, look, here's what I've got in terms of a contingency, on the basis that then I wouldn't take that to profit. It's very much a two-way street. But again, it goes back to trust that we were talking about earlier on, and building that trust with internally, the team. You detail your level of contingency or what you've got. But if you've got nothing, my offering to you is I won't touch you. But I've got that level of comfort that we know that if we experience issues, there's something there that covers that off.
And do you see, there's a lot of talk about AI. Do you see, the role of the QS is ever changing, right? All of our roles are always evolving. But how do you see the QS role in 5 years' time? Do you see it being dramatically different or not?
No. No, I think we'll have AI programs to help us. I know you're quite a fan listening to the podcast of AI and the programs that can bring. Now, I think we need to embrace it because it can help, but I still don't think we'll move away from that experience and judgment, but relationships. Yeah. AI is not going to build your relationship.
Definitely not. Yeah, I kind of just see, personally, a lot of the technology that we're building, but a lot of the technology as purely an unlock for relationships. Like the amount of time I would spend as a QS putting together a contract document for our subbies, hours and hours and hours and hours, when I could actually be on site doing something valuable. So it's almost just like that. It's an unlock, isn't it, of what's the best thing a QS can be doing is building those relationships, right? We've talked about it, building the trust across the supply chain, blah, 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 clients.
Clients, yeah.
But what are they doing there kind of?
I think we need to use AIs for efficiencies.
Yeah.
And look at what we can, improve on efficiencies from that point of view. But AI is not going to give you relationship building. AI is not going to give you judgment. AI is not going to look at what risks that you've got and create a commercial strategy around how you could back that risk off, for argument's sake, and protect to protect the organisation that you work for.
Even if it does, that would be a very long way away for it to be able to get the nuance and so on. So reflecting on a few things here, and I guess maybe this is like the advice to QSs in your team, or just generally QSs listening to the show who aspire to leadership. Like, what are the lessons from your journey or from how you feel about it to QSs who want to become commercial directors?
The key, a couple of keys really, but back yourself. If I hadn't talk about the couple of projects that I put my hands up for, I haven't backed myself, would I be in the position where I am today? I don't know.
You took that hit in inverted commas of, I guess you didn't get an instant pay rise. It was like a time. I'm going to earn it.
Yeah,
and then I'll get it.
But in doing that, kind of segues into what I believe is the key, is the number one trait to succeed, is taking ownership.
Okay.
And taking ownership of your job in terms of a project.
Yeah.
But taking ownership of issues, and if you have made a mistake, for argument's sake, or you've made the wrong decision, own it.
Okay. Put
your hand up and own it. I think that's that. I've always kind of working through my career, I've always owned things. If I've made an error, or I haven't made a decision that was necessarily the best outcome long term, then I've owned it and kind of put my hand up and said, yeah, that I made that decision.
And why would you want your team to do that? Like, what does that give you as a commercial director?
Comfort that I'll get honesty and trust.
Okay.
Because no one makes a bad decision intentionally.
Yeah.
We all make decisions based on the information that we've got in front of us at that moment in time. But if you can say, I made that decision, put your hand up to it. But the key thing on the back of that then is the learning.
Yeah.
What if you learn from it? What would or wouldn't you do again from that to make sure that we're not in that situation
and
again?
You've talked a lot there about like the comfort of the honesty. You've talked about wanting transparency and contingency. Again, is that comfort thing there?
Yeah.
Is there, in your view, where, because we've all been QSs where we've tucked away little bits here and there and it is what it is, but is there, it just feels like a lot of what you want is quite simple. You want honesty, truth, and fairness.
Yes.
And if you get all of those things right, it's kind of, construction is a tough game. Don't get me wrong. A project starts at X% and there is a lot that can chip away at that. But if you kind of have that approach with, like, you see that approach with your team, you should kind of get to the end point, unless there's been something horribly wrong that is hard to control, within the like order of your aim. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that feels to me quite a simple thing for a senior, younger QS, whoever, to kind of put into place. So you're saying ownership, and put your hand up and get on with it, which seems kind of obvious, but a lot of...
You'd be amazed.
What? Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
In terms of where people don't put the hand up for mistakes or don't flag issues on projects that may not even be of their sort of doing.
Until it's too late, or...
Until it's too late, or it manifests itself in a CVR, for argument's sake.
Yeah. Which is the all-time worst place for it to manifest, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. When the number hits, it's like, what is this?
Yeah. But yeah, it's you'd be surprised with organisations I work for in the past. They've just kind of think, oh, that'll go away. That won't come out. It always comes out. But the earlier, going back to what we said before, the earlier you know about issues, the more you can, the more positive or the better you can affect those issues.
And if you could change one habit that you see across commercial teams, what would it be?
Well, that's difficult.
Be nice to subbies.
That's a difficult one. I think it would be a greater level of ownership.
Really?
Greater level of ownership and being fair. I think it's yeah.
Again, quite simple, isn't it? And okay, and so we've kind of left it to the end here because I mean we booked in for this when you were commercial director. You're now managing director. Just, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this, but you mentioned when we were having a coffee before that you effectively again took ownership of. You built a business case effectively for I want to do that. Just talk about that.
Yeah, so we talk about ownership. It's taking ownership of my own career, and looking how I could positively affect a situation. And one thing I've been looking at since I was in the commercial director role, certainly in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, was my own success and looking at what next for me and what does that mean for me in terms of development of my team and making sure I was placed as well as I could be for if and when an opportunity to progress arisen, which it did, and then speaking to the business of we've got an issue in terms of our MD who's in post deciding to leave. We now haven't got an MD, sort of thing, and me taking ownership of that situation, saying, well, I can do it.
And so I'm
putting myself forward for consideration.
And so you talk about succession planning, right? And so you can talk about succession planning for a department or in a business. Yeah. Are you is succession planning, even as a commercial director, you're thinking about succession planning like in the context of continued momentum in your own personal development?
Yes. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, in some ways, succession planning, you think, is not about yourself, but actually, it would almost be counterproductive to your own development in some way. It would be perhaps a way to frame it, but actually, you're kind of thinking about how it creates onward trajectory. And
I think that's also the important fact is you're thinking. Succession plan doesn't have to be necessarily written down on a piece of paper in terms of a plan. It's constantly, and those thoughts will change. Yeah, fairly constantly. But it's it's thinking about ensuring that you're developing the team beneath you, regardless of what sort of level that you're at. If you're a senior QS, for argument's sake, on a project with an assistant QS or a QS working with you. It's making sure that you're developing that person who's working with you, that if an opportunity were to arise, that you could step up from a senior QS to a managing QS, for argument's sake, ensuring that the person who's working with you can then step into your position to make sure that you've got that, I used the phrase earlier on, you're not landlocking yourself. Yeah. And, you're not making yourself, of you stepping out of that role, an issue. You've got someone an opportunity presents itself. I'd like to step up to that opportunity, and here's the plan for beneath me. Such and such is ready, and I've worked on the project, for argument's sake, for 12, 18 months to know all about the project. It's making that decision as easy as possible. It's
interesting, isn't it? Because you did that. You probably did it multiple times, but you did it at senior QS to managing QS. You did it at commercial director to managing director. It's almost like you say, if you're ever you should be succession planning all the time, like in your own mind, because opportunities constantly arise throughout your career, and nobody is going to look at the senior QS who has got this project QS to a much more developed state where they can kind of take your job as the senior as a bad thing. They're only going to look at that as a good thing.
Of course they are. Because kind of in my role as commercial director, you'd look at different people, different projects, and you'd think, I can't take such and such off that project because it leaves too big a hole.
Yeah.
But if you've been working with someone on that project, you're developing, they've got the project knowledge.
Yeah.
You then
All of a sudden you think,
put yourself in a
I
better
can
place
unlock
to be
you.
able to step up.
But it goes back to that landlocking perspective, because there'll be a lot of people who feel like they're just, it's not quite moving my career in the way I want it to. And
And I've had a lot of great mentors along my in my career who've taught me to think like that as well, which I've benefited massively from. I've been lucky to have those people, and there's certainly an element of planning, hard work, but there'll be almost an element of luck as well, of almost right place, right time as well.
But that's kind of like you've made your own luck, whereby you've thought about it. It's not like it could have happened 6 months down the line. It could have never happened. But the fact that it's kind of, and which is why the succession planning kind of like as a principle makes a lot of sense, right? Is that if you're constantly taking that mindset forward, whatever level you're at, then the luck presents itself because opportunity presents itself, right? And you're just there to take it.
Yeah, of course it does.
Excellent. Okay, and so final question. As much as I'm going to miss listening to your delightful Scouse accent, and I am going to call it Scouse in the same way I call other people Cockneys. Just how would you define great commercial leadership? The point that you want to leave us with, like, if the industry could change and commercial leadership was outstanding in every business, sub, main, client, what would that be?
The overriding factor, create clarity. Because I think when you look at commercial management, whether it be managing project positions in terms of margin, when you look at disputes that may arise, when you're in a difficult final account situation, either with your client or with a supply chain member, both. A lot of it comes back to, well, I thought X was included, or I thought Y was or I thought your price for. I think the big thing is creating that clarity. But also giving the team beneath you the foundations to succeed.
Excellent. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, Mark. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for the invite.
And we will be back next week. I'll leave Mark's details, Seddon's details in the show notes. Thank you for bringing your delightful accent on the show, mate.
Thank you very much.